Okay, let's start again. So the five major change, I will give a short introduction, and then you, the 6 speakers, present your view, and after that Gustave will give a comment, and then we give time to floor for question and answer or remarks. Okay, so let's start that why this 6 major global change. The question is that first, that we are in the crisis of the pandemic. COVID-19 pandemic allows us to state that first, we are in the crisis of civilization, from the civilization based on the mode of production of capitalism, but also productivism, consumerism, patriarchy, and toward another civilization which is still yet unknown. That is why we look for the answer of our question. And the second, in this crisis, the Asia plays, or the rise of Asia play a leading role to the toward new civilization. However, the third point is that if the rise of Asia continues with this mode of growth, like what functions today, maybe we risk that the rise of Asia lead us to a catastrophe, ecological catastrophe, because the rise of Asia is based on the same model of the West, which is capitalism, productivism, consumerism, and of course patriarchy. So the question is, during this crisis, do we see a glimpse of light that allows us to see in what direction we are going? What is determining the future civilization post-COVID-19? That is our question. And I identified 6 major change that may determine our future. And it is based on the work of Gustave Massiah. That's why I invited him to give a comment and to co-chair this session. And Gustave Massiah identified 5 fields where major change occurs, which is gender and women's issues, ecology, biotechnology and digital transformation, demography, and new phase of decolonization. And I just separated biotechnology and digital transformation into fields. So that's why there are 6 fields instead of 5. And the speaker on gender and women issues will be Professor Diah Aryani Arimbi, who is professor in literary and cultural studies and specialist on gender studies. She is from Universitas Airlangga, Surabaya. Hello, Budia, are you there? Dia? No? Oh, she was there this morning. Okay, let's go. So the second speaker will be Devon Dublin on the major change in ecology. Devon Dublin is medical doctor for the animal. How do you say? Veterinary medicine. And also specialist on sustainable management of sustainability. And he is based in Guyana. And he was until last year, I think, based in Japan, and now he went back to his country in Guyana. Devon, are you there? Devon?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, just check if everybody is there. And then on Beatrice is entering, and then Joël Colloc is my colleague at the University of Havre, Normandy. He's medical doctor or physician, and at the same time a professor in computer sciences. So in fact, he combined biotechnology and digital transformation because he is a professor of computer sciences. But of course, what we means with the digital transformation, it's not just the computer transformation. Elena will speak more about this. And then after that, Elena Veduta, she's an economist, a professor of economics of Lomonosov State University, Moscow, and director of strategic planning department at Lomonosov State University. And she wrote a lot of articles on digital transformation, especially on cyber economics, I think, or planning. Cybernetics, sorry, cybernetics, economic cybernetics. And after that, we will Paulo Mota. So I saw Elena, she's there, Joel is there. And then after that, we have Paulo Mota, who is architect and urban planner. And he worked a long time in Latin America on urban development, and also with the UN on these issues of housing and urban development. So Paulo, are you there? Paulo?
Yes, I'm there, I'm there.
Okay,
Yes.
just checking one by one. And the last speaker will be Isaac Bazier. He is from Burkina Faso and professor of literary and cultural studies and African studies at the University Quebec, Montreal, Canada. So it is early in the morning. Isaac, are you there? Yes, Isaac is there. It's 4 o'clock, I suppose, in Montreal. At what time are you exactly?
Yes, it's 4, and I mean, yes, 5 o'clock 9.
Do you see the sun rise or not?
Not yet, but very soon.
Because I'm joking. You should be like a Muslim, because the Muslim, they wake up at 4 o'clock before the sunrise in order to observe the first prayer of the day. So you convert into Muslim, and it fits perfectly.
Even earlier, so
yeah, so it's just joking. Okay, so in Canada it's at 3 or 4 o'clock. So and also Isaac gave courses in his university on the theories and practice of decolonization, and he also brings his student to our conference if they come, of course. Now let's start. But Budia is there or not? Because it seems that she is not there. No? Puemi, what happened with Budia?
She has problem with the connection, the internet connection, Pa.
Does
maybe you skip it and
then
to another presenter
okay,
first, and
so
then
she will come later. Okay.
Yes.
Yes, please ask her to settle the problem. Okay. So
yes.
we'll start with ecology. Devon, so what major change in ecology, and what do you see the future prospect in ecology? Devon, time is yours. So everybody, maximum 15 minutes. We have 2 hours. So I will manage better today, because yesterday I was just lost. But today, in 10 minutes, I will warn you that you have still time, 5 minutes. Okay, something like that. So,
Darwis, can you stop sharing so I can share mine?
Oh yeah, sorry. Yes. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Darwis. So I'm gonna maybe it's probably a good idea to start off with ecology anyways, because the whole issue of COVID-19 has its roots in the environment. So first of all, what I want to talk about is the origin. Are you seeing my slide?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, perfect. All right, so one speculation was that it was probably an accident from the Wuhan laboratory of virology, and that is because of its close location to the Hunan seafood market. Apart from that, we have heard lots of conspiracy theories, especially on social media, about 5G causing the disease, possibility of biological warfare, that it's a ploy to put microchips into humans, etc. But the widely held view and the most probable is that it is a zoonotic disease. It has its origins from animals that transmit it to humans. And most likely candidates are bats and pangolins. This is a view that I hold as well, because the SARS-CoV virus is 95% genetically identical to the bat coronavirus. Now, China, having, I would say, taking the lead globally on this issue, instituted a wildlife ban. And that has a lot of implications for the world, because China is actually leading from the front on this issue. And the objectives for the ban was to safeguard human health so as to prevent any further zoonotic spread to humans. Also, it allows for us to confront illegal wildlife trade and protect certain species that are on the brink of extinction. This was lauded by the Convention on Biological Diversity, that China took the courage to do this. However, it's not as easy as it seems, because the use of wildlife in China is deeply rooted in traditional medicine. Some products are also used for ornaments, pets, clothing, etc. But it also has global implications, especially for Southeast Asia and Africa, from which a lot of the wildlife products come from. And whenever anything becomes illegal or is banned, it becomes a bit more difficult to control, because you no longer have a legal market that you can manage and regularize. And so everything goes underground. And so that will come with its own complications as well. What the pandemic has done is that in conservation, we've actually suffered a lot. And this was something that was not expected. At first, persons thought that because of the pandemic, everyone is going to be on lockdown and the environment is going to be safe as a result. But what happened was that we saw the opposite occurring. What happened was that because of the lockdowns, a lot of the workers could not go out to check, and to the forest rangers, etc., could not go out and do their work. Also, because of the slowdown in trade and shipping, etc., there was reduced income, many persons lost their jobs, etc. And also, partly because of food shortage, all of this resulted in more deforestation as opposed to outside of the pandemic. Another thing that we saw was the rise in plastic use. And this was because of the sanitation measures that needed to be put in place to combat COVID-19. So we are all wearing masks. We're wearing face shields that are made of plastics, gloves, etc. And all of these things end up being generated in the garbage. We also saw more plastics being used as a result of delivery services increasing. Persons are at home, they purchase products online, they purchase food deliveries, etc. And all of this comes in a lot of plastic. Also, because in general, hospital waste is separated from domestic waste. And what the pandemic did is that it caused a mixture of domestic and hospital waste. And the reason why I say this is because the face shields, etc., that we use for preventing the spread of COVID is actually hospital waste, even though it's not generated from the hospital, but we throw it away along with our regular domestic waste. And so the waste pickers are more vulnerable to diseases as a result. And of course, a lot of these things, a lot of these products ended up in the ocean as well. But one thing that the pandemic has done is that it has brought us face to face with the reality that One Health is important, that veterinarians, environmental specialists, and human doctors need to sit down and discuss. They need to talk to each other. They need to work together, because in the future, we may have these type of pandemics again, and it may even be much more deadly and much more vicious. And so as a result of that, the One Health approach is definitely necessary. The other thing that the pandemic has done is that it has really brought out the fact that our SDGs are really, it really fits in with the CHAC model, where the environment, the SDGs that are based on the biosphere, are the basis on which our Earth survives. And society thrives when we have healthy ecosystems, and also that the economy does well when the society and environment are also healthy. And this was demonstrated quite clearly when persons lost their jobs. We had mental health issues, more domestic abuse, manufacturing issues, even things like chips that are required for cars became scarce. So it shows all of the offshoots that we can have in the world coming out from an unhealthy environment. But one of the things that the pandemic has actually done, which is good for ecology, is that it has brought us face to face with the reality that we need to confront planetary boundaries. Biodiversity is the planetary boundary that is way beyond, is the Earth system that is way beyond its planetary boundary. And we need to deal with that. We need to bring it in check. And so this attention to biodiversity that is being led by China is actually a very good thing that we can get out from the pandemic. There may be a question as to why did this did not happen when it came to Ebola. Well, there is a big difference between the two. In the case of the wildlife trade in China, for example, this trade was more or less promoted by wants and desires and not by needs. But in the case of Ebola, the wild meat that was being consumed generally was done because that was the source of the protein. It was not necessarily, it wasn't by people who had so much and just had a desire for something additional. So that is the reason why we're seeing this kind of trend when it comes to COVID-19 that we did not see in the case of Ebola. The post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, which is now dealing with biodiversity frontally, which is being led by the Convention on Biological Diversity. We now have countries around the world, all of them working together to achieve this 25th vision of living in harmony with nature. And so from now to 2030, what we need to be doing is to be putting the mechanisms in place to achieve this 25th goal. That means that we need to create the kind of conditions for us to live in harmony with nature. We need to ensure that we have all the tools that are necessary to implement this. We need to ensure that our infrastructure is perfect. We need to make sure that our governance structure is also working well. And the way in which governments are doing this is through their national biodiversity strategies and action plans that are referred to as MBSAPs. And so this allows us to actually deal with the issue of biodiversity, deal with the issue of using nature in a sustainable way, which would in turn prevent a type of pandemic similar to COVID-19 in the future. So to conclude, what are my considerations for a common future? I believe that the way in which we expand our economies, our societies, etc., we need to look at it again. Because what it's doing is that it is bringing us closer and closer to wildlife. It is causing us to claim lands that really belong to wildlife. And that is going to make us more vulnerable to viruses such as COVID-19. I am quite, I'm not very optimistic, I would say cautiously optimistic about whether the pandemic would lead to a common future. Because if we look at things like vaccine distributions, for example, the disparity that exists there, we look at the way in which border closure and entry requirements were discriminatorily imposed, etc. It tells me that we're not necessarily learning or we're not necessarily performing better from a human perspective as a result of the pandemic. I thought the pandemic gave us an opportunity to express more love and care for humanity, but we didn't necessarily see that. Also, there's a bad track record of our world leaders when it comes to combating climate change and slowing global warming. So if this is the case, do we expect them to do better when it comes to biodiversity? I don't know. But if we judge them based on the track record, you can see why I'm cautiously optimistic. And finally, what I would say is that if we can really put a damper on the wildlife trade, and it's great that China is taking the lead on this, if we can really do this, and we are much more aware of the effects of the developmental plans that we have, and I guess Paulo is going to talk a bit about that as well, and what effects these plans can have on the environment. If we can address the use of plastic, reducing them, I think this would be a good start for forging a common future from an ecological perspective. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Devon. Please stop your sharing. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's perfect. It's less than 15 minutes. Bravo. Now, I will invite, so Bu Emi, Bu Dia is there or not? No.
She's already in the room.
Okay,
Yes.
Dia,
Yeah.
it's okay? Okay,
Yeah.
then.
Hello, Dia.
No, she's not there.
This is here in the list.
But I didn't hear
You didn't respond.
her voice.
Oh. Okay. I'll ask.
No, she's not there.
She's here actually. Her name is here in the list.
Okay, let's go to let's
To the next presenter first.
to the
yes.
next speaker. So I will ask Joel, and then after that we can go, come back to Dia. Joel, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah, okay.
No
So
problem.
I have introduced your short biography. You can develop, of course, but the most important is what you see as the major change in biotechnology, as the GMO, the vaccine, the cloning, the etc., etc., and what is the impact for the future, and what do you see? How do you see this that major change in biotechnology will lead to a future? What kind of future with the major change in biotechnology today? So time is yours.
Thank you very much. I will share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, firstly, I would like to thank Darwis Khudori for his invitation to do this presentation at the conference, The Rise of Asia. And my presentation is general laws of life in a nutshell, and why upset them will lead to disasters. An introduction. The first vocation of any living organism is to survive in an environment. In order to survive, living organisms must meet two basic needs: feeding, to ensure their metabolism, input, output, that produce necessary energy; reproduce in order to organize their sustainability; and a certain environmental need immediately follows: adapt them to changes in their local ecosystem in order to satisfy goal 1 and 2 under evolving constraints. How to continue to provide appropriate healthcare in a world with new infection agents arise, and keep a human and ethical medicine. What are the main constraints? The first main constraint is the limitation of available resources. Can you see this first slide? It's okay? Yeah.
Yes, I see. Yeah.
Okay. The limitation of available resources and the relative strengths competing spaces. The main complementary objective is therefore to fight or protect against other predatory species that are competing for survival. The greatest predator on the earth is certainly the human being species. But species are interdependent, and this is based above a hierarchy of composition of the constituent elements of life, which I will try to briefly describe on the next slide. In a systemic approach, that's important, we will show that changing any element of this edifice of life often leads to unpredictable consequences and provide effects towards human beings who produced them. I can't. Yes. Firstly, life is negantropy. Life is negantropy. It carries out information related to adaptation, and its metabolism that includes catabolism and anabolism. DNA and RNA support the information of the structure of proteins, protein synthesis, described by Professor Jacques Monod, Nobel Prize in Medicine. And the composition of proteins from amino acids allow to build cells and the building blocks of the life. In turn, the cells controlled by genetic informations allowed to be multicellular organisms like the human being, animal, vegetables, and actions of one block of life modifies information, the results of the whole very complex system, which evolution is unpredictable, beneficial or little. I have a problem of, yes. On this slide, you can see the whole evolution life in brief. The first column shows the particles.
Sorry, Joel, we do not see the next slide. We see just introduction, main constraints, but we don't see the next.
Oh yeah, this one is, you can't see this?
Yes, we see introduction.
Yeah, sorry.
But do you have another one? It seems that we speak about the following slides.
And this slide, is it okay or not? Evolution of life in brief.
No, we don't see.
Oh, incredible. Why not?
We don't see. We see just introduction.
Oh yeah, no, it doesn't work. So sorry about
So
that.
you should
Maybe I have to
to click the following slides.
Yeah. And here?
No.
No.
No change.
Oh, incredible. Maybe yes, very tricky. If I do that, you see it?
No. Maybe you should stop sharing and restart.
And restart. Sorry.
Yeah.
And here?
Yes. Okay.
And if I do that, is it okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Good. Okay.
Okay. On the first column, you see the particles at the bottom, the blocks of life, pre-life and life. On the second column, you can see the thermodynamic laws. Life is negentropy, is an exception in the universe, and complexity and the evolution will lead to favorable or lethal outcome. The third column shows entities type, particles, protein polypeptides, proteins, cell structures, genome building blocks, pre-living hosts, autonomous living beings, and improved living beings. And the size is important. It's from femtometer until 1 or 2 meters, for example. And you can see the different toxical infectious agents, radioactive isotopes, molecules, prions, virus, fungi, unicellulars, parasites, and of course, some animals and plants who are living in interaction. And maybe we can talk about transhumanism and transanimalism. You can see that the composition is very important, that all these elements are connected by a component in a component hierarchy. And the disease are cancer, toxicology, mutation by radioactive isotopes, for example, toxic isomers like prion, bovine and spongiform and fatalities, for example, genetically modified organisms in breeding, viral infections, mycosis, bacterial disease, parasitic disease. And of course, we can see that some pathologies are also zoonoses. On the last column, the row shows a different type of interaction between the entities, predator, saprophytes, or overlord. Is it okay, this slide? Life in negentropy. I already I will talk about prion. You can see the slide prion? Is it okay? Oh.
Yes, is it okay?
Yeah, okay. Agents of different size at different levels of the composition. The most tiny is a prion, which is a simple protein. Prion is a mill-folded protein inactive isomer causing bovine spongiform encephalopathy. The prion proteins are aggregated in amyloids that affect the tissue and make some holes in the brain and provokes neural and cell death. Animal and human contamination by ingestion of infected animal tissues, brains, spinal cords, in contaminated feed, provokes the disease. The first sign appears only after 3 or 4 years later and causes 100% of deaths. There is no treatment available. What is the cause? The cause is to feed cow, which eats ordinary vegetables with meats. And why? For profit. A virus. A virus is a pro-life entity. It is only a piece of genetic material, DNA or RNA, and encapsulated with proteins. It needs a human cell or bacteria to reproduce itself, and thus can only be transmitted from one host to another. Many viruses like HIV, Ebola are initially zoonoses. HIV was transmitted by great monkeys in the African forests, chimpanzee men, VH1, and monkey men also, and VIH2 and Goria, because people in Africa eat meat of monkeys. SARS-CoV-2, the virus of COVID-19, probably is a zoonose from bats and pangolin. I said the previous speaker. COVID-19 SARS-CoV-2 is an evidence of the potential coronavirus to be able to, wild reservoirs and jump to new species. You can see, for example, a reference on this slide. Another very important is personalized predictive medicine, which is a new economic eugenicism. The human genome was almost completely discarded, 19%, and the complete sequences of, for example, chromosome 21 was done 20 years ago. And in one hand, it's a very important discovery because trisomy 21, gives a Down syndrome and mutation of certain genes cause monogenic disorders, Alzheimer's disease, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, polyglandular autoimmune disease, and so on. And so in one hand, it's a very important discovery, but in the other hand, some people propose the individual predictive medicine, like the Pittsburgh Health Data Alliance, based on the genetic testing. Is it a good idea? What is the ethical consequences? What are the ethical consequences? The consequences of knowing risks of being affected by an illness, is it useful to know? Psychological impact is very important, high anxiety risk. However, it's only a probability, and very few autosomal dominant monogenic disease like chorea, Huntington's chorea are like this. Most diseases are multifactorial and polygenic and deserved by a set of genes, which uncertainties about the interaction and how it will be very complex interactions, like Prochance said. And the genetic epigenetic interaction is very important in this field. Many environment factors are involved to onset of the disease, and the psychological impact to know the risk can have dramatic consequences on the person: depression, suicides, pregnancy refusal, unnecessary abortion, and so on. So always the psychological impact is always forgotten. Genetic testing and genetics, what integral? Trivialization of genetic testing offers a risk of genetic profiling of people in a new with discrimination, shows to be high by employers, rejection by financial institutions, exorbitant life insurance premiums, the guarantee, and all this bring a loss of chance, and which is an important harm, like I described in a paper in 215.
Sorry, Joel. You have still 2 or 3 minutes maximum to conclude.
Okay.
Okay.
That will be okay.
So go directly to the main question: what is now happened at global level, the major change in biotechnology, and what is the impact for the future?
Yeah, so the major change is that all this eugenism is a very, very big scaring problem. Eugenic neighboring predictive medicine will lead to become the standard selection of superior race, which was close to the Nazi ideology. Yeah, but generally avoid genetic mixing that is essential for the adaptation of the human being to environments, and avoid this could provide an extension of the human species. You know. Okay. I will don't present the method. Yeah.
You can talk later in the discussion.
Yeah. But I will talk about genetic modified organism.
Yes.
You claimed.
Yes.
Predatory of agriculture and culture. So ecosystem is a very complex system. Introducing new species has unpredictable consequences of destabilizing ecosystem with new predators. You can see, for example, the Asian hornet that kills the bees, climbing plants invade and destroy the competition of the plants. The medium-term consequences of the introduction of GMO are not foreseeable. And for example, soybeans, corn, and frequent GMO and GMO suppliers offer farmers patented seed in order to create dependence on the supplier, and for the farmer again to buy again each year the seed in order to survive. And moreover, because the wind spread the patented seeds, they claim the neighbors that must pay a royalty for this onward use. Under the gaze of fighting hunger in the world, the promoter of GMOs disorganize the ecosystem to their benefits. So who is doing why? Who is doing what, why, and how? Who is doing what, why? The domination of our planet by a small part of humanity is motivated by the imperative necessity of capitalism growth in satisfying more and more profits for its minority ancillary needs by marketing products and services, which is destroying our environment. How? With a lot of money, companies are patenting molecules, organisms, the increase of the human transhumanism to the benefits of part of humanity at the expense of the other humans and living organisms on the planet, and that have no access to the minimum necessary means, feed, housing, and protection against infectious disease. Why? To make more and more profit and to get more and more money. Also, by developing, why not weapon with this. In the conclusion, human activity acts on the ecosystem at different levels of composition with unpredictable consequences on this complex system. The motivation are mainly mercantile, growth, profit, power that lead to neglecting the impact of the environment and on the lives of most humble human beings. We must therefore be very vigilant about scientific advances. First of all, to the absence of harmfulness, not only on the short term, but also to try to prevent changes in the ecosystem. Ethical methods are proposed to assess long-term impact of science Earth. And with François Rabelais, we recall that science within consciousness is the win of the soul. And with Henry Bergson, that we must act as a man of thought and think as a man of action. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Joel. So it's not too long. It's fine.
Time with
yes, it's a fine. 18 minutes is fine. Now, I see Budia. Are you ready?
Yes.
Yeah. So
yes,
what major change in global major change in gender and women's issues? And I think it is important that you are the speaker because you come from the biggest Muslim country in the world, where the three monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam is well known. It is patriarchy. It's based on patriarchy. So the change in Muslim world maybe will, especially on gender issues, may change a lot of things. So what do you see the major change in gender at national, but also regional, maybe global level? Okay, so it's a challenge, big challenge for you. Now, time is yours, 15 minutes maximum. Okay.
Thank you, Pak Darwis. I will share my PowerPoint. I'm sorry about the earlier because I have problem with connections. I don't know, so out of the blue, my Wi-Fi just shut down. Okay. All right, so can you see the PowerPoint? Okay.
Yes.
So, yes. Morning, good afternoon, and good evening for everyone. I'm from Indonesia. I will be speaking about women and gender issues and how the COVID-19 pandemic impacts on the women in Indonesia. So I think we all know what COVID-19 has done to us. You know, it disrupt everything. Disrupt our travel, cultural and creative sectors, educations. But on one hand, on the other hand, is the rise of digitalizations. And maybe we need, before the pandemic, we were so proud of our progress that we have come to the Industrial Revolution 4.0. But after that, we have to live with the new normal that based on virus, on nature. So I think the binary opposition between technology and nature, between culture and nature, I think must be rethought, because maybe it should not be one over the other, but maybe it should both, right? So in Indonesia, the COVID-19 pandemic, what does it mean for women, especially in what ways women are affected differently from men? So these are the things that I have collected from many sources that I think women in all over the places in the world share the similar things, that the pandemic has had an impact on women, especially those who work in the informal sectors, and most of them are women. And even according to the Minister of Women Empowerment and Child Protection, one of the impact of the COVID-19, especially in Indonesia, is the increase in unpaid works for women. And this makes them vulnerable, especially for gender-based violence, such as domestic violence, because the economic dependence on men. So in the global level, we know that global gender gap is still very, very, is still there. Only some few countries in the Western part of the world that achieve gender equality. But unfortunately, according to the World Economic Forum, it will at least take 130 years to achieve equality between men and women. So the struggle is still very long. In Indonesia itself, in terms of the economic impact of the pandemic, especially felt harder by those who work in the informal sector, because during the pandemic, we know the idea of working from home and working from the office. But for those who work in the informal sector, this doesn't mean anything. I mean, imagine if you have to work from home and you are coming from lower class income, and Indonesia is very hot, you don't have air conditioning at home, it's almost impossible working from home. So working from home and working from office is not only a matter of the pandemic. For me, it's also a matter of class, because it divides, you know, whose class is able to work from home and who's not. And during the pandemic, mostly men lost their jobs, only less women, but the condition of job loss is getting worse for those not getting the benefit, especially women. And according to UN Women in 2020, that women do not receive the most benefit is higher than men. And even according to the National Commission on Violence Against Women, Indonesian National Commission on Violence Against Women, child marriages, the number of the child marriages increases or double up, more than doubles, you know, in times of the pandemic. So how does this mean for the economic condition of Indonesian women? I think Indonesian women share the similar experience with women everywhere, that women are considered to be less entitled to work than men. Even if they work, usually they're not considered the the head of the family. So based on the research done by Pew Research Center, 70% of the research subject in Indonesia, Turkey, Philippines, and Nigeria agreed that women are less entitled and men still entitled. And then these are the data that recently collected by UN Women, the impacts of the pandemic on women based on the SDG, Sustainable Development Goals. If you look at the numbers here, most numbers for women are higher than men. For example, poverty, zero hunger, especially good health and well-being, because in many cases, women's health is made second to the COVID patient. So the reproductive health become less important. So especially quality of education, gender equality, clean water, affordable clean energy, industry innovation. So all these numbers show, for me, is a rather bleak number for women. That the rise of the number of the domestic violence, and then the number of the child marriages, restrictions, the crisis has prompted migration, etc., etc., etc. So if you look at the number, you know the gender gap is still exists widely in Indonesia. So the toll of the COVID-19 pandemic on us, especially on women, we have we know as new normal, and the problem is we are battling against an enemy that we can't see, right? So constant worry, constant alert. So our mental health and well-being are tested constantly. So my friend used to say that if COVID-19 is at the size of a cat or a dog, then it would be easier to eliminate that. But unfortunately, this virus is, we are unable to see this virus. However, the use of technology is rising massively during this pandemic time. So what is really intriguing is that our social reality is limited, but our virtual world is expanding, just like what we have now. The constant use of ICT has changed our way of communicating. So we are close to those who are far from us, yet we are far from those who are close from us. So it's very common now that even you, when you want to talk to someone in the next room in your family's house, you just text that person instead of talking. So that's very common. Gender-based violence, violence against women and domestic violence in Indonesia during the COVID-19 pandemic has risen. Various problems based on this data, an increase by 42%. Even UNDP also conducted survey of 1,000 respondents. Violence has been increasing highly during the COVID-19 pandemic. So marital rape, verbal violence, physical violence, especially by the spouse, right? Because especially for those who are coming from lower income family, husband or spouse inability to meet the needs for the family has become one of the trigger for the violence, not to mention the double burden where especially women work in the house and also working with the children and overwhelming with the household tasks. Okay, and even our National Commission on Violence Against Women before the pandemic, around 1,900 cases of violence, but the number increases drastically to almost 3 times. And most cases in violence occur in low-income families and those who work in the informal sector. But however, this is very, I think it's a kind of a hope that not all women are passive and victimized. And I think all doctors have all are in agreement that one of the ways to fight against this COVID virus is being optimistic, right? So this is what also felt by many women in Indonesia. Many have hopes and being very optimistic in the reaction against oppression that caused by the pandemic. One of the things that I noticed is that the strong, resilient solidarity and sisterhood. Women are the backbone of the healthcare, right? 70% against, according to World Health Organization. So this is what women do when, in terms of pandemic. Pak Darwis mentioned the women of religious organization in Indonesia. I think one of the things that is very optimistic about it, that they work together, like the Women's Islamic Islamic organizations such as Massiah, and then Women of Humanitarian Effort of Indonesian Hindu Dharma Women, Indonesian Buddhist women, Christian women organizations. So they work together, collected donations for basic necessities, face masks, as well as, you know, giving assistance in building hand washing stations, educating people, and also in the implementation of health protocol. One of the things that I can see during the pandemic that most women work is that they bring domestic sphere to public sphere in the form of public kitchen. So for me, it's really interesting because public kitchen becomes a shared space and collective awareness to answer the problem of food shortages, as well as a meeting room between those who, you know, have been segregated by social barriers and prejudices, such as women who are part of the Islamic congregations, Majelis Taklim, we call it, and the sexual workers. So in this publication, they met together, they work together, and they share, you know, what they have cooked to those who need. This is only the some of the pictures, because it was very common in many places in Indonesia, the public kitchen. And then this is also, we call it food hanging movement, appears in the midst of pandemic, especially pioneered by the housewife. So what mostly women, what these women do, they collected donations and they bought the basic needs and they hang it in the fences. So because the social distancing, right, you could not get together. So there are places where only women are allowed to take this food that hang in fences. So this movement was huge in 2020 and 2021. But when the situation became better, so but still we can find this. And now we have also the idea of the Blessing Friday. So where people do the similar thing. So what are the major changes? One of the things that proposed by Gadis Arifia is the idea of intersectional feminism, where when we look at the women's problem, women issues and gender issues, we are not looking at the gender relation only, but also in terms of race, ethnicity, class, LGBTQIA, other minority groups, because as much as women, as varieties of women identities, you have many identities as well. Emphasizing the concept of critical practices, which uses both to critical questions and activism for social change. So one of the things that I noticed is the idea of gender-based mitigation, because when the Indonesian government declared the COVID-19 pandemic as the disaster, so most of the disaster neglect the idea of gender perspective. So one of the things that done by Kapal Perempuan, the women's ship, that's the name of the NGO, is that collaborating with many organizations in 6 provinces to work on the mitigation, but having a women's perspective approaches. So because of course, you know, when you talk about mitigation, like refugee, or even when women, how do you say, victims, or those who are affected by disaster, natural disaster or non-natural disaster, have to live in tents. You forget that the privacy, because there is always be an opportunity of gender-based violence when people are, when men and women and all kind of gender are put in the same place. So this is what we've done by women activism, the mitigation, gender-based mitigations. And this is also what Darwis mentioned, that one of the progressive women's movement in Indonesia is the Islamic women's movement, Islamic feminism, that Rahima was one of the, I think it was the pioneer organization on women's Islamic women's movement. And very recently, they had this conference called Women Ulama, because unfortunately within the conservative interpretation of Islam, women are not allowed to be ulama, or the religious leader. So Rahima is working constantly to educate, also to give new interpretations of the woman's authority and also autonomy, because this is problematic in Indonesian Islam. So what I conclude from the woman condition affected by the COVID-19 pandemic in Indonesia, that the number is still not good, because you have access to gender-based social security programs, right to protection and security is still very low. The rates of double burden, feminine word which is attached to women is not being challenged. Violence against women, access to reproductive health services, because there's been a lot of study that the patient of COVID-19 comes first, then later women with the reproductive health issues. And the economic impact on employment opportunity for women is still low, and limited access and information via online, because we have to admit that even when we say that digital world is very democratic, but access is still not, because not all women can have access. Only probably a middle class above can have access. It's very elitist, when we talk about access to online or even virtual or digitalization. But the optimistic thing is that women are still resilient by adapting and fighting against the unseen enemy, be it the virus or even the patriarchy, to achieve gender equality. And it's still a long way, but we have to strive there. So in my opinion, in my edition, not only that we have to work within the intersectional feminism, but also cross-sectional feminism, because that's the idea of, a networking. So strong social solidarity and trust, perhaps, we are going to lead to a post-capitalist world. Okay, I think that's all from me. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll get back to you, Pak Darwis.
Yeah, thank you. Excellent presentation, Budia. Okay, it is, you speak around 17 minutes. Bravo. Now, I invite Elena. Are you there, Elena? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Just tell us what happened with the digital transformation. What major change in digital transformation, and what do you see in the future? I mean, after, what is the impact and what is the future of digital transformation? Okay, yeah. Okay. So 15 minutes, okay?
I will try to be very quick.
Yeah.
My report will be without presentation, but I will try to be not so quickly that people should understand.
Yes, of course. Yes.
What I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I want to continue the ideas of our conference, because I liked the report of Devon Dublin,
Yeah.
who underlined that very important to have plan, which will be constructive for our future. And last our friend Dia Harianya Arimbi, she said that we need strong soul solidarity. What my opinion, if we will connect two these parts together, it will be a new stage of development of the world. I'm, of course, more specialist in constructive of plan, so I will come back to the report of Devon Dublin. And what I want to say about the situation. Now we use such national system of information, which was accepted by UN. But I want to say this information has a lot of repeating and absolutely lie. So to use this information to constructive new plan, the trajectory of development of our world, impossible. The question is how to calculate plan and how to receive information from all enterprises, from bank system, that we can use this information and we can calculate such trajectory of our moving to better life for people. Because globalist, transnational corporations, they do not need such plan. They like economic chaos, and they will try to do all efforts, do not permit to do such plan to any states, because chaos for them means that all our incomes which we produce, all our actives will be redistributed in their use, in their profit, thanks to economic chaos. So the problem how to go from economic chaos, how to create proportional development of economy, if we will follow to Marx political economy, it is very, very important. So what showed pandemic 2019? She showed that international trade is not very good coordinator of our relations between our countries, between our branches and sectors. Thanks to pandemic, we lost a lot of working plan, working time, and as a result, we received today world's inflation, and the world became significantly more deeper in crisis than we were before pandemic. And in this situation, we can see that the world moved from a liberalization strategy, liberal strategy, to protectionism. More close to home, maybe states should be more active in decisions in economy, how to protect people. But again, it's a pity. We know that we live in monopolistic capitalism, who got used to solve all problems as using military activities. And now they can't do this because some countries have nuclear weapons. So they're trying to find another decision. And we know that a lot of attention they have to digital transformation. And as usual, they use this transformation to have very good control on the behavior of people and very active in military sphere, where they hope to create some artificial intelligence for the military purposes, which will be maybe more powerful than nuclear weapons. And I want to say that our president, he said that who will reach the best AI, he will be the ruler of the world. And Elon Musk answered that it is very bad, because who will be the leader, he will be initiator, and he will be the winner of the Third World War. So it is very dangerous, and when we can see a lot of problems, we can speak about problems, but the most important to find decision of these problems. So what we can see now, what global projects we have in the world. We know that inclusive capitalism, it is a project of corporations and Vatican. They are not speaking about any economic mechanism, how to realize very nice aims of this project. If we will see new green course of which likes USA and Europe, we can see the same, that they want that countries, developing countries, they should reduce production of oil, of coal, and so on. And we know that result will be the reducing of industry, and it means reducing of quality of life. And China's project, One Belt, One Road, he has only some such expansion purposes, but has no any ideas how to solve problems of the crisis, which continues to be more and more deeper. What we can see about digital technologies today, they have very good implementation in different technical spheres, in Internet of Things, in financial technologies, but all these digital technologies have no any relation how to construct a plan of better future for people. And moreover, I want to say that this chaos in implementing of digital technologies is doing more worse for people, is doing more deeper the crisis. And when sometimes they can say big data is very good, but big data, it is chaos of some information and how to work with this information to do proper decisions, how to change the vector of globalization, no answers. Only the chaos. And thanks to this chaos, we can see very strong new monopolistic companies, what GAFAM, which continues to force different states to use their ideas of digital transformation. And all these ideas have no any, absolutely not connected with our idea to go away from the crisis. So where is the exit? And I want to say, we had some tokens with Darwis in our letters, that when we're speaking left social democrats, speaking about future, I'm always surprised why they're not speaking about experiments of Soviet Union, because only one country in the world which tried to create a real plan for people. And we had done a lot of achievements. We were winners in the Second World War, and we became the country of bipolar world, which defined the vector of globalization. Why the question? What was the secret of our plan? And secret was that our plan, which we introduced during the industrial period in 30 years, had back connection, a cybernetic plan. Not only what I will do command, you must do this and this. No, we use back connection from enterprises, what they can implement. So it was some process of iterations, how to connect what we want, our final demands, with our producing possibilities. But we used these possibilities, and we can do proportional development of economy. What happened with our country after 50s? Yes, we had the most important problem, which we need all people of the land. We should go to automatization system from this manual government by economy, because manual government, it is always mistakes. It is impossible to government by proportional development of economy in our needed direction. And how to introduce this famous new technologies, digital revolution for our planning. And the question requires that we should do the answer. What the model, economic mathematical model should be inside of the soft for our computers. It is the most important problem, how to create this new model of planning of economy, which then will be programming of this model algorithms, and then our computers, and they will work in direction which we will construct our future. And I want to say that the problem of automatization of economy, our country understood only 10 years after a period of cybernetics, the book of Norbert Wiener. And that period, Kennedy's advisors said to Kennedy that if Soviet Union will do automatic system, we will be losers in this Cold War. So what I could see when I analyze all works of our institute who worked in these problems of automatization, I have such opinions that a lot somebody had done, that scientific approach to create this automatic system died. Died. And the problem, they could not, all institutes came in different directions, the same as now. All digitalization develops without scientific approach how to create this plan. But what I want to say, as conclusion, more close to conclusion, that we have such dynamic model, a system of algorithms, which continues the experiments of our Russian Gosplan, our Soviet Gosplan, and we can create such cybernetic system to government in the direction of for people better their life. And Russia had such celebration 100 years of our Gosplan, the most important organ who had created our achievements. And the most interesting that people of Russia, nobody can see, but I know we are very active in intellectual work, how we should use our former planning experiment for the better life of our people today, when Russia absolutely destroyed after 30 years. So I want to say that such very high efforts of our people to approve a model of Gosplan in direction to use the results of digital revolution gives a lot of good fruits in the sense that in November, 8 November 21, our president had done decree of strategic planning, where it is at first for all countries, you will never find in any other countries. He said that we should create plan when our aims will be supplemented by our resources. It means we come back from this indicative planning about we like this or we like this to give them preferences. We come back to our great experiments, how to connect what we want with our possibilities, what to produce. And the next very interesting decision from this decree is that we will create special scientific practical center near president or under president of Russia, not under premier minister, which will be responsible to formulate not only tasks, but the most important, how to introduce dynamic model of intersectoral balance to practice, how to use our information from enterprises and from bank system, which will go to our model, which will work and will help us to create the trajectory of going to the growth of real incomes of people. And very big work began in this direction in Russia. So I hope that Russia will give her new product to globalization, because I can say truer, nobody will do such model, nobody will do such economic cyber system, because nobody had such great experience of planning of economy, which had Soviet Union. Russia came back to the to create something very important new for our future globalization. Thank you for attention. I hope I was.
Thank you. Perfect. It is 14 minutes. Perfect. Bravo. Bravo. Very good and intriguing. Very between information, communication, militarism, intelligence, artificial intelligence, economic planning, etc., etc. So I think Gustave has many things to say. Okay, now let's go to demography. Paolo, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. Okay.
Okay. So
wait a minute. Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes, I will start to put my screen. Okay.
Yeah,
Wait a minute.
Okay.
Here we are.
Okay.
Can you see it?
No. Not yet.
No. Not yet?
No.
Ah. Wait a minute. Come on now.
I know.
No?
No.
Wait a minute again. I have to find again. Oh, my. Here it is, maybe. Now?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Okay. So
Okay.
tell us what happened with the demography. What major change in demography, and what do you see in the future? What is how a demographic major change determine our future? Okay.
Well, yes. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay.
Please make it full
Well,
screen.
I would say one thing that was very interesting, because it was a topic that with Darwis we have been rising in the last time. With these 2 years, we have been completely taken by the COVID, and we forgot to have enough attention on changes that were already ongoing before the pandemic. And by the studies and the data we are seeing, the pandemic for the moment will not have very, very much high influence on the ongoing trend of the pandemic, on demography. Demography is expected to rise to a peak of world population in about 2050, 2060, and then it will start to go down because of the fertility rate. So anyway, we're arrive to about 9.2 billion people in 2050. So it means almost 1.5 billion more than now. But well, this is the trend that we are seeing about what is going on, and this trend will not be affected too much about the current situation of the pandemic. But this diagram is not, this is a global diagram, but is not corresponding at all to what is happening in the different parts of the world. What we will see in the next decades, well, starting from now, is that will be completely different, the situation between some continents or developed countries and some others. Europe will face still and will remain like it is. Western world, more or less the same. Latin America and the Caribbean also, they were keeping very flat. Asia is going to start, but then it's starting to go down. Also China is starting to face now demographic rate of going down of fertility. So they're making politics to make Chinese increase again. India is supposed to pass China population in 2027, so in a few years. But what is the bomb arriving? Is arriving from Africa. Africa is rising in a very, very high way, and it is double the population in 2050 in almost the sub-Saharan Africa. So it means they will arrive to 3.8 billion people. So it means that Africa will represent 40% of the world population in few decades. So this is what is meaning what is happening now already and will increase more and more, that it is the immigration. Because the immigration, like before someone was saying, is related to food shortage, to the fact that agriculture is now driving in a completely different way like it was before. So we have all the, like Kolok was saying, we have a different way of killing the resources of the planet for others. then climate change is increasing terrible. So what we're seeing now in this rush that we see toward, we can see here in Europe, but it's happening the same in America, from Mexico and from the Central America, this is growing. So this is creating an enormous change on the demographic structure of the countries. So I go on. The trend, here is some data. They will arrive at 38 billion. The bulk of population is expected to take place in Africa. So
sorry, maybe you want to show the next slide because you stopped at the first
yes.
slide.
Okay. Well, here we are seeing how it's moving now, all the immigrants. Now, it's something that I wanted to say on the previous slide, but anyway, I will say it, that the immigration is not like we are thinking always coming from the south to the north, south to north, but it's a strong immigration south-south. Yeah. The south-north immigration is representing 34%. The south-south is representing now the 38%. So it is a big movement of migration between Asian countries, between Latin American countries, between African countries, from the poorest areas of one country to another to the most, let's say, moving countries. So, for example, they are moving from Bangladesh, they're going to find work in another place. They're moving to the Middle East or to the Emirates, or they're moving from Central Africa to Nigeria. And this is happening worldwide. So this, wait a minute, what? Yes, the growing migratory phenomena from the developing countries with socioeconomic problems are aggravated by the impact of the pandemic. Well, this is what I'm saying. These are, to this, you have to add most visible example to which to add substantial population displacement from areas of the world in conflict, like Syria, Iraq, Palestine, Rwanda, Libya, just to say someone, or due to insecurity, like Myanmar, Ethiopia, Iraq, plus those to the climate change. So this is creating an enormous social problem of people displaced that are needing to have a very strong, we're talking about millions and millions of people. It's expected that in 2000 people will be 296 millions of migrants. So it's an enormous quota of people going around. And so this is what I was saying before. I've not been following the paper here, but you can find everything in the paper. Yeah. There will be an Excel. So it is believed that within 30 years, at least 216 million people will be forced to leave their places of birth and residence, driven by the impacts of climate change, both to the increase in temperature, rise of sea level, violence, weather climatic phenomena, and so on. So this is what is happening, that this change of demography and migration is creating an enormous impact on the structure of the world, because most of the people is going to live into the big cities. For this idiotic and Western model that we have still now. So we have already now 757 people living in 100 largest cities of the world, 11% of global population. And these cities are mostly of them located in emerging countries, in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And they're increasing more and more in the next 6-7 years. So this is really something that we will discuss later in the urban topics, but they're all connected. So you can see that most of these people who's migrating, they're going to live in these big cities, 43 or more, but they're going to live, many of them, in slums, in precarious settlements. We are seeing in Africa, for example, I think it is, I have been seen 2 years ago, in South Africa, there are new, how do we call them? Well, new towns or...
Township.
Yes, of 1 million people living around. Yeah. They're living in miserable conditions. Yeah. In Nigeria, they're expected to live in 3 million people in one of these neighbors. So this is changing really a lot. It means that in Africa now, there are 297 million people living in urban areas. So it's 38% of the total urban population. So this is a dramatic phenomenon that is coming from demography, from migration, and so on. So you see here is a map. you can see that, for example, people living in the slum.
No, we do not see your slides. You show just the first one.
You're not seeing all the slides?
No, you just show the first one. You should click for the next.
But I'm doing that, next and next.
No, we are not seeing it. We are not seeing them.
I arrived to the final. I have to do it next.
But, yeah.
Well,
you still 5 minutes, okay?
Well, maybe I can try one moment to stop.
Yeah.
Wait a minute and do it again. Wait a minute. I go back.
Okay. Yeah.
Puedes ampliar la pantalla, Paulo.
Can you see it now this way?
Yeah, click. Yeah.
Okay. These are the figures I was saying about the countries, about the race of Africa,
yeah,
and the decline of Asia and the standstill or zero of the other continents.
Yeah.
This, I'm showing the slide of how the people is migrating from one place to the other, how strong it is, the migration. Well, this is what I was saying. This is how the people is going to live, mostly in these big cities, how this is rising in the next 10 years. And that these big cities are all in Asia and Africa, with 757 million people living in big cities, and not and here, for example, you see how the population is living in the slums, like I was saying. So it is really a big problem. And here I go to the conclusion is that the impact of the new demographic trends, the international migration flows, rising urbanization are hitting all the huge metropolitan areas with increasing problems in every sector. The post-COVID urban development needs a new non-Western model presented after an ecological session with a holistic approach. We have to think again to general awareness and cohesion of citizens, and we have to use the technology with a tool. We have not to be used instead by the new technologies I have been hearing by many previous speakers. We are getting victims of and we are not able to manage this technology because it is managed by an elite who is deciding in agriculture, in health, in vaccine, whatever it is. So it is really an epochal change like that we were saying in the beginning. We are seeing a new, I hope so, we are seeing a new approach, a new world that we have to be based on wellness, social, climate, environment, and so on. So I'm sorry that the presentation was not followed properly like that. But I think it is really important, the work that is done, that I've been joining a few years ago by the Race of Asia conference, in which really I see that everyone, we are all sharing our topics, but in a global approach, a global vision. That 4 years ago, when I started to join, was looking like maybe now I see this is becoming really the center. So I think that all this movement can start from the non-aligned countries, because the Western world is completely following capitalistic, consumeristic, how you say, internet, Jeff Bezos and all those. I think that the non-aligned countries, the emerging countries, that they still have their own values, their own traditions. They all still have, they can really be those who are facing the future in a new way, and abandoning or trying to mitigate this model. What Darwis was saying in the beginning, that is completely wrong, because China has been following the Western model till now. And the Indonesia too, and India maybe a little bit less, but this is the big defect. We need a new way and approach. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paulo. Thank you. Perfect. It's 13 minutes. Oh, bravo.
Okay. I learned it now.
Less than 15 minutes.
You
now,
can read it and you can see the papers after, okay?
Yeah, okay. So please stop your sharing, okay? And now we go to Isaac. Isaac, are you there? 4 o'clock in the morning.
And now it's 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. It's not so early. That's fine. So as we discussed yesterday, it was the last question about the impact of COVID-19 on indigenous people. So we still have indigenous and non-indigenous or foreigners. So the question is that the decolonization has not stopped with the independence after the Second World War, but still inside the country, but even between the West and the rest, the system, the colonial system, is still, as a system, is still functioning. So what can you tell about the new phase of decolonization today? What happened and what is the prospect? What do you think for the future? So can you tell us in 15 minutes maximum?
I will try so. And let me try to share, first of all, my screen.
Yeah.
And thank you all for being here. So, and also thank those who spoke before me. So thank you. New phase of decolonization. I saw what we listed after that title, and this is a huge number of issues. I'm not qualified to speak about all of them, but I'm living and observing what is going on here in Canada, and my field of specialization is on Africa, world Africa, and post-colonial theory and the colonial approaches view from an African perspective. So first of all, I want to just let me try to change. Okay, do you see?
Yes,
the
yes.
change?
Yes.
Okay, so signs and manifestations. This is my first point. I just go directly to the main points. In the last 2 years, it is not only the coronavirus pandemic that has attracted attention. Tragic events have taken place that have led to strong popular mobilizations. I mean, I don't need to tell you who is pictured here. So I just want to show you some cases, some examples, so that we can then reflect on them. And one of the most events that got global attention is the death of George Floyd in May 2020, and we live in Canada here, and we got it from the US, and we had also the manifestations and so on, and the requests for justice for all. And the second example I want to show today is this of the death of George Echaquan, and I chose it after our discussion yesterday, after the question raised about the situation of Indigenous people, and we also have the issue here in Canada. And George Echaquan situation was in September 2020, 4 months after the death of George Floyd. This Indigenous woman, mother of 7, died on September 28, 2020, shortly after recording herself as healthcare staff in a hospital north of Montreal hurled racist remarks at her. Can you imagine? She recorded it live, and people could see, because for many years it is about the racism against Indigenous people, but it seems like that the system doesn't hear and notice, acknowledge how tragic and terrible it is. And then Joyce Echaquan became the voice and the figure of this racism that works in the system itself. And this happened in September 2020 here in Montreal, near Montreal, and it became a problem, a subject that helped to increase the requests and the demonstrations against the system that produces racism without acknowledging it. Now, let me, the coroner in charge of the post-mortem investigations stated clearly afterwards, and by saying Joyce Echaquan would be alive today if she were white. You know, this is a clear statement coming from those delegated by the government to investigate. Then let's see what my last example comes from Africa, from West Africa, from the Sahel, in November 2021. A French, next. Do you see it?
Yeah.
Okay. So the French, a French army convoy leaves Ivory Coast, the south, and tries to reach Niger, so in the north. We know that France is heavily involved in this region of Africa to fight against terrorism. This convoy was not the first of its kind, but this time the people in Burkina Faso and Niger blocked it for days on its way. And it wasn't only in the big cities, please, but this was a manifestation, a popular manifestation against this convoy, and we have to read it and size it properly. The demonstrators demanded an end to French neocolonialism. We see here, so what in every manifestation, people have messages and then asking France to leave West Africa, to leave the Sahel. So you see this boy, 12 years old, he became Alidou Savadro became the symbol of the demonstration against the presence of France in the region. He succeeded in destroying a French drone that was flying over the processors. Maybe you saw the picture in the media at that time in November last year. So now my second point is the following: popular protests as new signs of old problems. What we see during the pandemic. We see signs, manifestations, but I just want to put forward that the issues didn't emerge with the pandemic, but the pandemic helped or brought them so far that we can size them better, and sometimes with tragic situations. So where is the link between the increased BLM Black Lives Matter movement since the death of George Floyd, the death of Joyce Echaquan, and the following protests in Quebec, the blockades of the French military convoy in West Africa? So there are at least two common aspects of those of these manifestations. The first one is my observation, the popular nature of the demonstrations, which means that the current demands are made more by civil society organizations than by political leaders or by both. And this is very important. Our people come together, and sometimes it comes to a global movement. George Floyd, for instance, or in West Africa, we see our people react against France, but it isn't against France. We will have to speak about it later on. But in Mali, in Burkina Faso, in Niger, our people behave. We see this is not only a political a movement carried by political leaders, but mostly by people, so population, and even people uneducated in French and in European languages, uneducated people, but they are educated. They have a political view and of things, how they go, and this is a very important point, aspect of the manifestations. The second one observation is the request for justice, dignity, independence and alternative options. And we see them, this is a common point in these cases, because Africa is far from Canada. We can, I can give my testimony, the temperature is not the same. But the request for justice, equity, independence, and alternative options, we see it even here in Canada through the policies with dealing with ED, ID, equity, diversity, inclusion, and decolonization. And this is also the theme of the annual conference of the Canadian Association of African Studies here in Canada, which in which I am working right now. So the pandemic has impacted many aspects of the new era of decolonization. The issues illustrated by the situations above didn't emerge with the pandemic, of course, but COVID-19 plays a very important role because the pandemic allows people to better size the systemic injustice, and this became a discussion, a point of discussion here in Quebec, for instance, where people don't want to use the term, the concept systemic injustice or systemic racism. The government, the politicians, some of them, and the first one is the Prime Minister in Quebec, doesn't want to use it. But the fact is that the pandemic and the situations I mentioned above help to better size this systemic racism, the systemic injustice, inequity, and the consequences of neocolonial structures on their lives, on the lives of people in the countries. For instance, according to Statistics Canada reports, the pandemic has major impact on First Nation people or indigenous people here. And I quote, indigenous participants report greater impact on their ability to meet financial obligations or essential needs than non-indigenous participants. Second, indigenous participants report worsening mental health. Indigenous women participants in particular report strong impact on economic well-being and mental health. And I want to emphasize the last one, saying that stronger adverse impacts linked to pre-existing vulnerabilities, including long-standing and persistent disparities in socio-economic conditions. This is very important. It's why I was saying the pandemic didn't create the situations, but the pandemic brought a focus on these situations and these pre-existing vulnerabilities, including the long-standing and persistent disparities in socio-economic and conditions. And this is the case in Canada, but it's also the case in former colonial countries, and we can notice how people react right now against France as a symbol. Having said that, let me share 3 observations on the pandemic from a decolonial perspective. The first observation is included in the report I quoted. COVID-19 as here it is. So COVID-19 as a global pointer, not only to long-standing and persistent disparities, but also to the colonial and neoliberal structures that produce these disparities. This is above beyond what we can observe, and there are structures, and it's important to reflect on these structures and ask how they work and how people handle them and maintain them so that they produce the disparities we are mentioning. Mudimbe from VY Mudimbe, a scholar, pictures the way colonial structures proceed and manage to last and even survive the political and explicit colonization. And Mudimbe, I quote, says, I would suggest that in looking at this process, it is possible to use three main keys to account for the modulation and methods representative of colonial organization. The procedures of acquiring, distributing, and exploiting lands in colonies, the policies of domesticating natives, and the manner of managing ancient organizations and implementing new modes of production. Thus, three complementary hypotheses and actions emerge. First, the domination of physical space. Second, the formation of natives' minds. And three, the integration of local economic histories into the Western perspective. These complementary projects constitute that might be called the colonizing structure, which completely embraces the physical, human, and spiritual aspect of the colonizing experience. So let's say that the pandemic has further highlighted the structural inequalities that formerly colonized societies have inherited from the colonial era. It's clear that the neoliberal, neocolonial structures and situations are rooted into the colonial past. This is, it gets obvious. The pandemic, needless to say, who benefits from these structural inequalities even today. The pandemic has thus played the role of a pointer to the inequalities and frustrations on the one hand, but it has also made it possible to mobilize social and political actors on the colonial issues. My second observation is this one: COVID-19 as a pointer to the multipolar world order, bringing new options for the colonial movements. In Chad, Guinea, Mali, and recently Burkina Faso, elected presidents have been replaced. They have been replaced by militaries. You hear about it. You read about it in the last months and weeks. In three of these cases, people of the countries are rejoicing and welcoming the military, while Western countries deplore a backstep of democracy. So, in the context of the pandemic, other global players, mainly Russia and China, increased their presence on the continent. The first one through military assistance, and the second one through what have been called, for instance, the vaccine diplomacy, and so on. These examples stressed the idea that there are options and alternative partners other than the usual ones. This also explains how France became the scapegoat of a renewed decolonial movement that targets not only foreign neo-colonial and neoliberal players. This is very important. It isn't not the fact that these foreign players are targeted, but also local leaders who seem too close to the latter and unable to solve main issues in the region, such as security, health, and so on. So we have many aspects of the demonstrations and the requests we can see on the streets. The last observation, and I will conclude with it. I hope we have the time to do it now. And the last one, the third one, is that the pandemic can be seen as a breaking point and an opportunity. You know, the discussion here in Quebec, for instance, about the anti-racism and the request for more justice was responded with a kind of strategy trying to just slow the movement and then keep people quiet. The Prime Minister here in Quebec said, responding to the protest against racism, he said, we need, nous avons besoin d'une évolution tranquille. We need a quiet evolution instead of a revolution. Referring to the Révolution tranquille in 1960 in Quebec, when Quebec became a modern state. But he didn't say we need another quiet revolution, the revolution, referring to the revolution that built the modern Quebec. He said we need a quiet evolution. It means, look, remain quiet, we will find a solution, but without disturbing the ruling system in which we are living right now. And this is a problem. This is, in many cases, a short-term political strategy to just slow down and bring movements like anti-racism, anti-racist movements and decolonial movements and bring them to a quiet position and a comfortable position for a status for those people who work in the system.
Thank you.
Certainly...
It's already passed. So...
may I conclude? Is it okay?
Well, it's already 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Already 20 minutes. You speak 20 minutes.
Okay. Let me
just one. Yeah, okay.
Okay. So what I see here is that crisis accelerates innovation. And I have many examples I can show. And the pandemic is not only a crisis, it is an opportunity because in the situation of a crisis, we people, it isn't not only about the way vaccines have been produced, it is also about innovative practices we can acknowledge in many countries in Africa, in Burkina Faso, and the possibility for those innovative practices to obtain legitimacy and just be acknowledged and find a way to profit people, and this cannot occur in a system ruled by structures, neocolonial and neoliberal structures. And this is my last word. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. More than 20 minutes, because I have an impression every time that you are concluding. So that's why I didn't stop you. But it's continuing. But it's never better. Now, I would like to invite Gustave. Are you there, Gustave? Yeah, I saw your face. Please activate your.
No, yeah. I am there. Yes.
Yes. You will give comments on these 6 views on the major change, global major change, because you are the origin of this idea. You identified 5, but I separated biotechnology and information communication technology. And I think I am right, because we saw Joel Colloq and Elena presented quite different things. Okay. Thank you. Now your time.
How long?
Well, 10 minutes. It's okay.
Okay. So we had 6.
C'est pas grave. Attends, Gustave.
Oui.
Parce que j'ai parlé avec mes étudiants là.
You are muted.
Okay, Gustave. Now, Gustave, you can start.
Okay. So I will take less than 10 minutes, I hope. So thank you very much. We had 6 very interesting presentations of main questions. And each of them will be a very important introduction to discuss on future. Allow me to come back to a general view of the situation. And I will send some discussion about each one of these presentation in a paper that I will send you. We are living in a time of great uncertainty and strong contradiction. It is a period of change and rupture. It is marked by the conjunction of 2 major crises, a financial, economic, and social crisis, and an ecological and healthcare crisis. The financial crisis of 2008 was a first warning. It is a systemic crisis, that of the dominant mode of production. While the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 seemed to announce the victory of the capitalist system and the hegemony of the new phase of capitalism, which is neoliberalism, which was imposed in 1980 after having been experienced in Chile since 1973. The financial crisis of 2008 marks the structural crisis of neoliberalism. This crisis is reflected in a new series of conflicts and insurrection from 2011, with the Arab Springs in Tunisia and Egypt, the Indignados, the Occupied. In more than 50 countries, popular movements demonstrated against inequalities and corruption. The reaction from 2013 is represented by authoritarian and repressive regimes and also by the rise of far-right ideologies. From 2019, a new pandemic, the coronavirus, disrupts the world. Very quickly, it is clear that this pandemic is linked to the ecological crisis and cannot be understood if we do not take it into account. This is not the first time that the pandemic and the climate have burst into history. In a prescient book in 2017, Kyle Harper published in London about the fall of the Roman Empire. He underlined the conjunction of the pandemic, the pest, and the glaciation accompanied by volcanic episode. He indicates that the pest took the roles of the first globalization of the Roman Empire, and that the conjunction of the pandemic and the climate explains in part the loss of resilience of the Roman Empire. And it raised the question of the loss of resilience of the current international system. We must admit that the current crisis is considerable. It is economic and social, ecological, democratic, cultural, and geopolitical. How can we analyze the changes and the perspectives? To do this, we can refer to the proposal of Gramsci, who wrote in prison shortly before his death in 1937. In a period of profound upheaval, the old world is dying, the new world is slow to appear, and in this chiaroscuro, monsters are emerging. The monsters are here and prepare dictatorships and wars. How to evaluate the new world? The hypothesis is to identify fields in which the old world is in crisis and which new possibilities are emerging. Fields in which contradictions are at work, in which new avenues emerge, and in which the confrontation between the old and the new happen, in which several paths for the futures coexist and confront each other. Darwis has selected 6 of these that we have heard. In each of these fields, the division between the old and the new, the relationship of the new world, the contradiction between the new forms of domination and emancipation is constructed. And perhaps I want to just say one word on decolonization, the new phase of decolonization. In Bandung in 1955, the conference of the heads of state of the first independent state of Africa and Asia took place. Zhou Enlai, who represented China, declared, the states want their independence, the nation their liberation, the people the revolution. He will use this formula in his speech in the United Nations. The independence of states is more or less complete. We can measure its scope, but you can also see its limits, especially since from 1980s, the dominant countries, the United States, Europe, and Japan, took control of globalization by imposing neoliberalism. They put the end to the attempt of the countries of the South to equilibrate international trade by imposing on them debt and structural adjustment program. The second phase of decolonization is beginning, that of the liberation of nation and people. It calls into question the form of nation states and can be seen in the demands of plurinational state on the one hand and the evolution of form of globalization on the other. It also questions the role that large geocultural zones could play in the evolution of the international system. To conclude, I remain that we are living in contradictory time. On the one hand, the rise of far-right and reactionary ideas. On the other hand, the radicality of new ideas carried by very offensive movements, feminist, anti-racist, ecological, indigenous people, peasants, workers. The battle for cultural hegemony is very intense, as Gramsci said. It opposes identity and security on the one hand, and equality and solidarity on the other. The debate is about the conception of freedom, individual and libertarian for the right, individual and collective for the left. This is what the social movement can contribute to fight against idea of security and identity on the one hand, and to promote equality and solidarity on the other, especially international solidarity, and to highlight the strategy of movement in relation to the evolution of the situation and the rupture in progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Gustave. You speak less than 10 minutes. It's just 7 minutes. Very good. I forgot to introduce you to our colleagues here. Gustave is at the same time engineer and economist, and he was a professor at the School of Architecture and Urbanism. So it's interesting how economists and engineer, well, engineer is not strange, but economists to be professor at the School of Architecture, but it's just another history, I think. So we are now already 1303 French time zone. I propose one turn of question and answer. Okay, so anybody wants to ask a question, just short, and then if it is possible, you address to whom your question addressed, or you can just launch your question to every speakers, all the speakers. It is possible. So please use the hand, how do you say, raise hand sign if it is possible. Yeah. Hey, nobody, no question. Yeah, Mano Ranjan Mohanty. Yes, please. Yes, please, Mano.
No, it's Vidyut. Yeah.
Oh, Vidyut. Okay. Okay.
Well, I have one question for the person who talked about demography.
Oh, Paulo. Yes, Paulo.
Right. So he talked about the migration and all that. So what is the role of policymakers in that case? And secondly, I must congratulate Dia's presentation, but it has to be nuanced in terms of caste, class, ethnicity, and religion. Indian case is very different that of Indonesia. For example, the saffron people are not allowing women with hijab in the class. So we have to keep all this in mind before we take up gender issues. Thank you.
Thank you. We will collect question, okay? Second question. With raising hand. Nobody? It seems nobody. So I will ask Paulo to answer the question of Vidyut.
Well, the first question is, that's a good question. It's a question of $100 million. How we can transmit this to the political or authorities is not easy. It's not easy because demography is based on numbers and figures, and so it is going this way. So I think what we should do is exactly, I think, in my opinion, first of all, is to provide in every place of the world the proper food, health, climate conditions, people to live there and to have a reasonable life. So to reduce one way the need of having in some countries still thinking to have many children because they can help to the family economy and to have a reasonable amount of fertility. And the second, I think that we can intervene is that one of reducing the immigration. But we are not reducing the immigration by putting walls or by putting frontiers or like that, is to make sustainable development on all that. If we go back and we think about the plans, and I don't want now to enter on the theme that maybe there were also neo-colonialist plans or neoliberalist plans, the bigger challenges has been that of providing a sustainable development in other countries. I remember the declarations made by European Union with Africa in the 90s. We should have together development. Never happened, nothing. It was just declarations and so on. So we continue to see this enormous disparity, and this can come only from a bottom-up movement, because if we think that authorities, they want to change something, I think that is a very, very difficult thing. I think the challenge is really that now is thank you to the internet, the platforms and all that is rising movement on this. But seemingly these platforms are used more by other groups who doesn't want to change things at all. So I think it's just a work of a seed and to move and to make sensitive authorities about that. And about the demographic control, you think China has been doing it for many, many decades, only one child in the family and most men and girls, like a traditional culture they had. The situation is that now China is facing a very serious problem of elder people, and they have to change the model. So it is a question that we have really like Gustave, who is planner or economist like me, is a question like architect or planners is not very easy at all. But I think it is something, an answer that we can give all together.
Okay, thank you. Budia, you want to respond to the remark of Bidyut?
Yes, thank you, Darwis. Thank you very much, Bidyut. I agree with you because, you know, when we talk about the effects of pandemics on women, we have varieties. I wish I have more times talking about this. For example, one of my students, she's doing research on the rise of the domestic violence. And we always think that it is true that according to the statistic that women from the lower income family, they are more vulnerable to domestic violence. But my student studies found that even women that belong to the middle class above, like the professional family, where the husband is a medical doctor and the wife is a professor at the university, it doesn't really make much difference when it comes to domestic violence. So I guess, yes, I agree with you. There has to be more, how do you say, identification when we talk about women, because women comes from varieties in terms of class, race, ethnicity, even the status, marital status, because in Indonesia, marital status is one of the identification that you need to put on our ID card. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you. Is there any other question?
That was just, I just want to
Yes.
comment
Yes, please.
on
Yes.
what Professor Bidyut said.
Yes.
I think we also need to recognize that there is an opportunity here as well. This has to do somewhat with Elena's presentation, because a lot of these discriminatory access to education has somewhat been dealt with due to the pandemic. A lot of the classes are now online, and more people have access than they did before. Because when you look at the classroom setting, you have a fixed number of students that you can accept, and then you know, those with better opportunities get in as opposed to others. And I saw that here in Guyana, where colleges which usually would have a cutoff number, they actually tripled the number of students they accepted. So there was much more opportunity for people who might not, who would traditionally be discriminated against. So I just wanted to mention that there is some positive aspect as well, dimension to that.
So, well, is there any other remarks, because we have already passed, and anyway tomorrow, no, starting from today in this afternoon, the six field of major change will be developed into workshops and do panels. So there will be 3 sessions on gender, for example, 1 session on biotechnology, 2 sessions on digital transformation, and then how many sessions on ecology? 2 sessions on demography and ecology, and on decolonialization. It will be on the COVID-19 as a breaking point, 1 session. So all the session, all the presentation today will be developed starting from this afternoon into smaller workshops. That's my information. So now it's already 13:30 in France. So we have in France, my students already left me because they need to have lunch, but I manage alone. There is no problem. But we start at 2 o'clock. So if you agree, we stop our session here. It's okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so we come back in 45 minutes for small room and in the parallel sessions. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you later. Thank you.
Thank you, Gustave. That was great.
But policymakers.
And also, the whole session was great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Mano, you will include in your conclusion. Hard work, hard work. Thank you very much. Thank you. I will leave you because I will join my students in the university restaurant. Okay.
Excellent session. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you, Beatrice. Thank you. See you later.
See you all. Congrats.
See you later.